Good afternoon. This is the December 4th, 2017 meeting of the Glendale Water and Power Commission. Madam Clerk, first item on the agenda.
Okay. Roll call, President Lal.
Here.
Commissioner Avanesian.
Here.
Commissioner Hale.
Here.
Commissioner Camargo.
Here.
And Commissioner Kedikian.
Here.
Two is consent items. A, approval of the minutes for the October 16, 2017 meeting. And B, approval of the minutes for the November 6, 2017 meeting.
I just had a question about the October 16th meeting. Were the names that are recorded here as the speakers, were they checked against the names as written on the comment cards? Do you know?
President Lal, members of the commission, they were not. This is based on the transcript that was prepared.
Ah, okay. In that case, I think I have an edit, a correction under the list of speakers. One of them was Elizabeth Vitanza, not Metanza. So if I'm correct, the name is spelled Vitanza. But that's just from my recollection. Everything else looks fine to me. Do any of the other commissioners have any adjustments, edits, suggestions on the October 16th?
No, not on the, not on October.
Commissioners?
No.
Okay. Understanding that a full transcript of the meeting is available separately, this is simply a record of who spoke.
Correct.
Okay. So with that, I'm open to move to approve with the edit. Can we do that? Just with the edit?
So moved?
Second.
Okay, great.
Okay. 3, GWP Commission staff
sorry,
comments.
just on the November. Can I touch on the November? So on the November meeting minutes, there's just, I think, a typo under 5A about the fourth line down, associated organization bills for upcoming term. However, I think it should be however, comma, the future. So it looks like there's just a period in there. So
Stray punctuation.
A little stray punctuation, so we can just eliminate that. Otherwise, they look fine.
Okay, do we have a move to approve with the edit?
So moved. Second.
Excellent. Okay, Madam Clerk, next item.
3 is GWP Commission staff comments.
If it's okay, I'd like to move this to later in the meeting, given that the director of GWP is not able to be here at the moment. Could we relocate this item to later in the meeting?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, Madam Clerk, next item.
Okay. 4A, reports A, strategic plan.
Madam President, Commissioners, I'm Craig Keenan, Business Transformation and Marketing Administrator. Is this working? Okay. So I'm going to give you an update of the strategic plan. Normally when we do this, we give you a very high level. This time I'm going to go over the key initiatives that inform that higher level. It gives you a little more detail, and I think it'll be a little bit better. It's still red, green, and yellow. Our first category is customer engagement and satisfaction. There's 7 key initiatives that we outlined, it was 3 years ago. And I'm reporting as of the middle of this 17-18 year. Our first key initiative was to do a mobile customer access to data by December 2015 and enroll 10,000 customers by June 2017. We have 3 different platforms right now. I think we're about 90 or so below the 10,000, so we're not quite there, but I think we're close enough. We're adding more people every day. We have our SUS mobile application, our WaterSmart application, and our CEVA in-home network application. That's the picture frame that also you can control your thermostat and other things in the house through that. Develop a common customer experience across at least 2 residential customer interface channels by 2015. enroll 10,000 by June 2017. Essentially, they're the same programs, and that one's green as well. Complete implementation of a functioning outage management system. We have completed it and tested it, and we're using parts of it. It's not fully automated right now, but it's been tested and it does work. Implement full-scale in-home area network program. That's our SEVA in-home network. We started the program on time. The enrollment was a little slow because the implementation was delayed for about a year. We do have about 818 enrolled, and we're looking to enroll another 1,500 this year and in the years to come. Developed capability to tailor programs and services to specific customer segments. We feel we're on track there. Reduce customer service direct customer contact by 5% a year. We're meeting that goal. The one that's red is the billing exceptions. Right now, we have to manually calculate our solar net metering. We don't have an automated system for that yet. We're still working on that. So in this area, I believe we're doing a pretty good job. Organization and structure. Develop and implement an internal communications program to educate all personnel on our goals and how they fit in the organization and to recognize individual efforts. The general manager does send out now, we started it, I believe, about a year ago, an email blast he sends out every month, actually highlighting all of these things and recognizing personnel achievements. If they do a really good job fixing an outage or they get promoted, he recognizes that. Reestablish a safety program. We have done that. Complete a comprehensive review of the GWP organization. Develop a plan to maximize organizational efficiency. We have reviewed all the positions in the organization, looked at salaries and job classifications for a number of them. So that's been completed. Develop clear standards and operating procedures to increase efficiency. That's an ongoing item. Develop and implement a department-wide training program. Again, that's ongoing. And I just mentioned the review of the job titles and descriptions and salaries.
So, Mr. Keenan, before you
Yes.
move on, can I just ask you on some of these 4, 5, and 6 on this slide here? So I hear you saying that the work is ongoing. In other areas in this report, you do have a forecast or a date by which something is to be completed. So can you just touch further on that and what ongoing means?
It means that we're working on it. We've had a lot of turnover on the upper level. Ramon has left 6 months ago. We brought in some new people, so things are slowed down a little bit in that area, but we're trying to get our feet back up and moving forward on these items. The job descriptions, I know that April and I reviewed all the job descriptions in her area. There was some 30 classifications, I believe. And we've identified the line of succession and those kinds of things. So we've been working on that.
Okay. A follow-up question there, too, regarding that last one that you mentioned, number 6. So are there, I imagine in some cases you'll find that the compensation is right where it should be. In other cases, perhaps it is below and needs to be brought up. And in other cases, perhaps it's above where you would anticipate a comparable position ought to be compensated. So especially with the last category where perhaps someone is being overcompensated, how do you deal with that dynamic?
I haven't seen that, actually. We're overcompensated. In the comparisons that I've done, they're either at the market or below the market. Okay. At most, maybe 2% above, and it's very low-level positions.
Okay. Thank you.
The higher-level ones, no, they're not.
Excuse me, I have a question also. How these standards and procedures is related to increasing efficiency?
Well, we want to, we go through and review the kinds of things we're doing in our procedures. Today, we just had a meeting on how we process our power marketing invoices and who they go to and how we might streamline that process. And we had a really good meeting about 2:30 today with power management and the company that runs our software system, and try to streamline how we process those items.
Thank you.
That's just one example. Grid operations, continue piloting systems to ensure analytics, automation, and control. I mentioned the outage management system that we piloted. We have our DVI system, which is Conservation Voltage Reduction Program, that we're rolling out. It allows us to regulate the voltage on our feeders and save energy. It also could be used as a DR mechanism in a time of a shortage of electricity, to be able to reduce voltage and take the load off our system. So we are rolling that out. Number of computer systems we've rolled out. We've upgraded our MDM in our customer service information system. Grandview substation, that was completed a year and a half ago. We continue to upgrade feeders each year from 4 kV to 12 kV. We have an electric and water meter data analytics program we've implemented.
So on that one, to what end is the data being collected? What are you analyzing, and what is that being used for?
Well, it takes in all the meter data from electric and water. We can look to see instances of what might be theft and those kinds of things. That's what it allows. If there's overusage, maybe there's a leak and things like that. The conservation voltage reduction pilot, that program is the one I just mentioned that we're now adding more feeders to. Automating the feeders, we're working on that. Technology and business systems. We looked at the forecasting model. We do have one in place. The water master plan has been done. Grayson Repower, you're familiar with that. We've done that initial plan, and now it's further along. We looked at a second connection to the grid. We found it wasn't feasible. The integrated resource plan, we completed that one. I believe they're updating that one right now. EOU rates and EV rates are something we're looking at in the COSAs we're looking at right now for electric.
I had a question with regards to the project sponsor, Abuega. That's Ramon Abuega. Am I correct?
Yeah, I should have changed that name to Vahik.
Okay. Who's the person now?
Vahik. Yeah, but Vahik's last name is Adadian.
Okay.
I'm sorry for that oversight. Expansion of the recycled water system. I know our water department is always looking to do that. Power water facilities. We've virtualized our computer systems. We've upgraded OpenWay and our ORS system. We've upgraded our enterprise edition. That was delayed about a year, but we have since completed it this past year. The business intelligence program, the new target is June of 2018, due to the fact that we had to finish upgrading our ITRON system before we could start that project. Then we have the IT, our business systems, integrating that through the service bus. We just brought somebody on a few days ago to help us with that, TIPCO integration. The data warehouse is complete. The business intelligence, that was delayed because of the ITRON upgrade, so we're looking at next summer. Customer information automation, that's ongoing. Mobile workforce management, asset management, that's been delayed for another year. We were hoping to have that done sooner, but it looks like it's going to be another year or two before we get to that. And then on the finance, develop and automate executive and key management dashboards. I have ongoing, that's part of our COSA rate plans. They're going to provide us with dashboards that we can then update at first manually and then automate those dashboards. The KPIs, like I said, that was delayed, and we have to do our business intelligence program. That's going to be at least another year. Fiber optics business plan, that is, the plan is complete. We are on the process of implementing. We do have we hired a consultant last May who's helping us with that, and we're moving ahead.
That fiber optics, I know something was coming up for city council today or tomorrow. What is that? The fiber optics?
The council approved the development of a fiber optic utility. So GWP now has a separate fiber optic utility. They adopted a new fee schedule. Tomorrow is simply, Disney is one of our original customers. We're putting them on the new fee schedule.
So people can buy internet access? Is that fiber optic?
They can buy dark fiber capability. They can use the existing infrastructure we have, and we can sell capacity to that.
Okay.
And we have a rate schedule for it. We had it analyzed and a feasibility study done, and we expect our neighbors in Burbank have been doing it for quite some time and are pretty successful at it, and we feel we can replicate at a minimum what they're doing.
So Disney is the first customer, basically?
They've been our first customer. I think we signed with them in '98.
The contract we're renewing is 10 years old.
So they were very amenable. We told them we have a new fee schedule adopted by council, so you'll have to abide by that. They said, great. We put them on, and we've got another phase to this, which is to develop the dark lease document, which we would get council's approval on as well. So Disney is really on a one-year agreement until we get that done, which will be before next year, and then we'll sign them up on that agreement. But as far as the fees go, they were fine with that. And it's actually to our advantage. We'll be collecting a little bit more money than they currently pay.
Are we trying to get more customers?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And when we did the feasibility study, we obviously reached out to folks who may have interest in working with our economic development people. There was quite a bit of interest.
Okay.
And let's see, I mentioned the business case for asset management and workforce management's delayed. And so that's the update. Do you have any questions?
I have a general question. This strategic planning, is it periodic? I mean, it's for a certain number of years and we have goals at the end, or it is just like ongoing thing?
The original plan, 5-year plan, and I believe we did that 3 years ago, and we're looking to update it. We were hoping to have it updated by now, but we're a little behind in that, but we hope to do that in the next year.
Which year we are now, that 5-year plan?
Year 3. But we set it up as a 5-year document, but things are very dynamic. So by the time we got to about year 2.5, we said we need to update again. So it's just a matter of us getting the time to set aside and do that. But we have been working on certain facets of it. It's an ongoing working document as things change, especially when you talk about regulations and laws that are changing. That changes our whole strategy oftentimes. So we have to make those adjustments. So we felt there was enough significant changes that we needed to go back and redo the document, or at least update it, I should say, not redo it.
Mr. Keenan, the cost of service analysis, what is the timing for that update?
That'll be done hopefully by the 1st of next year, and then we'll sit down and review that. That's both water and electric, and we'll go from there.
Very good, thank you.
That's if you back in the process, obviously we want to have a new rate schedule adopted to be effective by July 1st. So, you're looking at probably early next year we'll talk about the cost of service analysis, but most importantly how that relates into a new fee schedule.
So as part of your presentation, you mentioned that solar, the accounts, the residential and commercial accounts that have solar, you're still doing hand calculations about how much is coming through. much energy they're producing. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Your
Sorry about
microphone.
that. My mic was off. I apologize. Could you hear
Do you
me?
want to, Tammy from customer service
Yeah.
handles the billing. So.
Hi, it's partially manual. So if a credit is generated, we have to do a cover letter that then does the calculation for the customer so they know how much their credit is. Then at the end of the year, the whole process of how much compensation they'll get back is a manual process as well. And then we also have a rate schedule on the books for the PC TOU rate, which we're not able to actually bill right now. We do have a few customers that would like to be on that rate, but the system's not capable of offering that rate at this time. So we have our North Star vendor, which is through the Harris Company, that is working on modifications to the system that will be completely completely automated. So right now, every solar account ends up on the exception list, which goes into our account. And so our target to reduce those, we're having difficulty bringing that down to the goal.
So TOU is time of use?
Correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure I was following.
Sorry.
Okay. And at this point, customers who have rooftop solar or solar on their premises, that doesn't integrate with the SEVA system. So they're not able to see their real-time solar output through the SEVA system, are they?
Yeah, they can see it on the mobile app right now. I thought they could see it on the
I thought they
SEVA
could
front.
too.
We got experts.
Okay.
Here's Herbert
You've
Garcia.
got experts.
Herbert Garcia, Public Benefits Manager. The SEVA right now does not connect with the solar customers, but it will.
Okay.
We're working with the vendor to be able to do that.
Okay.
So in the next few months.
All right. So at some point then, I was just wondering, how does GWP calculate solar energy or measure solar energy that's coming from rooftop solar or small-scale solar systems in the city that's coming onto the grid? Is there a method for doing that?
Is metered,
Yeah,
and,
they're
then,
separate.
and then we calculate off the meter. Unfortunately, our billing system, and it's the same with most utilities, hasn't quite caught up to the new technology with regards to renewable energy. So part of our COSA is going to be a whole review of all of these different things, from net energy metering, time of use, EV, electric vehicle usage, and setting schedules for those. And then we'll have to work backwards and see, to the extent that our software vendor and billing vendor can accommodate us through our current system, or if we'll have to make radical changes in order to do that. Right now, as Tammy indicated, a lot of the work is handwork because the system wasn't built to handle that. But as far as we know what uses, and believe me, those customers are concerned about that. So through a meter, and then we just have to calculate it separately.
Right. No, I understand that, at the end of the day when the bill arrives, you know how much total usage there has been or not, or how much the total output of the system is. I'm interested in real-time usage. Are you able to measure the flow of solar energy from these? Are you able to kind of divide out and see, okay, we have so many systems in the city, and they are producing a certain amount of electricity at any given time, and we know in real time what that amount is.
At any given time?
Well, I would think we'd be able to do that. We're not
We wanted
doing
to
that
look,
right
yeah.
now.
I mean, we know exactly how much energy is being produced or used by those systems each year, and we have that number.
We have the data.
I don't think we've ever looked at any given time or snapshot in time.
Okay.
I mean,
Curious.
we know periods, obviously.
Right.
It's pretty easy with solar. Sun shines, sun doesn't shine. So,
Right.
but I don't know that we've looked at
We
hourly
haven't
rates or
done that.
anything.
But we do have the generation data and the consumption data from the house, so we could theoretically put together some sort of a software program, and I would think the business the business information system that I talked about implementing in the next year or so would probably do that quite easily.
So I would imagine then that looks like just reduced demand from the Energy Control Center side of things, right?
You would think, but it's not really that much. It's like, to them, it would be noise. I mean,
Yeah.
Okay, because the amount is so incremental.
Yes.
Okay.
That's part of our problem. Yeah. So that's a dilemma. Do we have something separate that handles that, or can we incorporate it into the main system? I imagine at some point in time, maybe the next time we upgrade our software, they'll probably be all-encompassing, but we may need to have a separate system to run that renewable part of it until things catch up.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions, commissioners? Okay, thank you very much. Oh, okay, well, just turn around once and then start, okay.
Okay, 4B is utility modernization update.
Okay, so for this update, I'm going to go over our solar program and solar in Glendale in general, our EV program, and a discussion of our energy efficiency targets that we just set this past year. So in terms of solar in Glendale, including the Glendale Community College and the new system at the Galleria, there's about 1,300. I have 1,345, but Annetta says it's closer to 1,390 since I put this together. But we're at 13.2 megawatts or 13,000 kilowatts installed. So we've had a solar incentive program since 2002. We were one of the first to have one. Since 2002, we've provided about $13.8 million in solar incentives to install about 892 systems. Current budget, we have $1 million in the current budget for solar rebates. We provide the incentives to residential customers right now. The incentive for this year is $1.03 per watt. They can get an additional green incentive if they sign over the green rights to us of 26 cents per watt. And we pay 100% of the cost of the permits. There's a great demand for this program. So at the start of each year, we do a lottery in the first couple weeks of July. After about 2 hours, all the money's taken for the coming year. And if you apply and you don't get a reservation, you're put on a waiting list so you get in the program the following year. We've added 155 applications for this year. Currently it's about $854,000, and we'll keep adding to that as the money frees up. We had 72 applications from the lottery that were placed on the waiting list, and we allow customers to install their system, and then the following year they can get the incentive if the money is still approved by City Council. We don't want people waiting around and holding off putting in a system because they want to try and get the incentive the following year. And then there's a number of people that they don't even apply. They just put the systems on themselves, and we have quite a few of those. In order to allow others in the community to participate in solar, we're looking at a community solar program. Sometimes it's referred to as a solar garden, or typically if you find some open space, a parking lot, something like that, you put up a system, and you allow customers to buy part of the system, essentially. We've also looked at a model where we would be able to sign up low-income customers so they could get solar power in lieu of, say, the $13 discount. They would get so much power from solar so they get the same benefit, but it would be green instead of just a dollar amount. And like I was saying, there's 3 different typical participation. You buy part of the system, or you subscribe to it, or there's another way is for donations from a nonprofit, or you donate some solar power to a nonprofit. So that's the solar program. Do you have any questions on this?
I had a couple of questions.
Sure.
With regards to about approximately 1,390 systems. Have any of these started installing wall batteries like the Tesla battery or anything that we know of?
Not that we know of. We've been Well, Steve looks like this.
We've had an inquiry from one person.
That's it so far? Okay.
Yes.
Green rights, I'm not familiar with it. What is that?
There's a certain value assigned to the green power produced by the system. And so a few years ago, when we changed our program, we decided that if people will grant us those rights, we'll give them a little more of an incentive. And the hope in that is that we could get credit from the CEC towards our RPS.
And that's in perpetuity to enter
Yes.
that.
So that basically counts towards our RPS goals?
That was our hope.
It
That was
is,
our hope.
President
We're
Law,
still
members of the
working on that.
commission, yeah, it is only as to the energy that's fed back to the grid. So any that's used on premises, by state law, that's not part of our RPS.
Oh, I see. So it's just the excess.
Right.
Oh,
Correct.
that's significant.
Yes, we didn't think originally that was the case. We thought if we did this program, paid that extra fee, got the signature from the owner, that we would get credit for everything.
They changed the rules
They
on
changed
us
the-
over the years, but
Sorry.
we'll be revisiting that. But
Watch this space. Because that's an interesting debate.
Sorry. I want to give others a chance to ask questions, but I'll just go. Who sets the budget of these incentives? Is it City Council?
Yes, sir.
And community solar, do we have any location candidates at this point? Are we studying?
We have quite a few. So, I mean, just off the top of your head, if you can think of city structures, so you think of parking, the top of parking structures, you can think of covering public parking surface lots, you can think of parks, you can think of the top of reservoirs, you can think of potentially areas, open space areas we have, which are very few, quite frankly, landfill, although that has proven not to be beneficial use. But we're looking at all of those. There's also the potential that you could enter agreements with individual property owners to put on their roofs. So if multifamily building owners were interested.
So where are we with regards to the next step? It seems we figured out different places we can put them. What's the hurdle, or are we trying to get that going?
Yes, some of it is financial, so you have to invest in the infrastructure up front. And we need to kind of get the biggest bang for our buck. As Craig indicated, we're also working with a firm that specializes in, it's a nonprofit firm that specializes in low-income solar, community solar, which looks like it may be something that we might be able to do rather quickly. So we're looking at that as well. So I don't have a timeline, quite frankly, of when it would happen. Craig's staff has a couple of good locations, so we'll just have to pencil out the engineering and the construction and see where we're at.
Okay, but we're pushing in that direction
Oh,
to start
absolutely.
some of these projects.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And just because Commissioner Kadikian had asked the question, you're all aware of where this funding comes from. This is the public benefit charge money. So that's a special fee that each ratepayer pays. It's a state law, and then a percentage of your bill goes to this public benefit charge. That money can be used for very specific purposes. It can be used for primarily energy conservation, but the other thing it can be used for is rate subsidies for low-income and senior customers. You cannot spend ratepayer money, regular ratepayer money, on subsidies. So the general revenue that GWP makes from selling electricity cannot be used to fund these programs. So the only thing we use is the public benefit charge money. The $1 million is probably our largest expenditure next to the rate subsidies. So our two biggest programs are the rate subsidies, which Craig indicated is up to 13.
it's probably $3.5 million. And there's probably 15,000 in the program.
And we plan in our budget to increase that. So we were planning to take that up a little bit higher. And probably the second biggest program we have is the solar incentive program. So I know sometimes there's comments made about why don't you spend all of the money you have and develop rooftop solar, even if that was a viable option. You cannot spend ratepayer money on any kind of subsidy. We could build community solar, quite frankly, and we'd have to make sure we got a clear legal opinion on that. As we owned it, kept it, and sold the electricity, we can do that. But any kind of incentive for folks to install their own, whether it's commercial or residential, was a limited source of funds we used to do.
And the public benefit money that we collect, or the GW collects, who sets the rate on that as to how much we can
The
collect?
city council.
City council, okay.
The law was passed by the state legislature, but the individual utility has the flexibility to make that number. Is there a maximum on that?
No, just a minimum.
So, yeah, they have a minimum, and we were above that. I think we're quite a bit above that. And the city council could increase that if they so desire.
Well, that would be, if I may add, that would be necessitate a vote of the public to do that, because it is essentially a tax on the bill. So
If we change.
to increase above the percent, I think it's 3.6%.
Right now it's 3.6.
Of the bill. So to go to a higher percent collected from each bill, that would have to go to a public vote.
Okay. That's it.
So electric vehicle charging stations. So the state puts out rebate data, they collect rebates, so, or the information on people that apply for rebates. And based on that information, last time we checked, actually I looked yesterday and the number's up a little bit more. They have data through September. It's about 1,600 electric vehicles now through through September. We add about 40 a month according to this database. And so based on, you carry that out, we could have as many as 5,000 by May of 2022. That would not include anybody who's bought one and not applied for a rebate. I imagine there's a number of people out there that have done that, but we have no way of knowing that. In terms of charging stations, City Council approved $300,000 for our EV charging station program about 2 years ago. We've installed 4 level 2 electric vehicle charging stations and 1 level 3. The level 3 is over here in the parking lot by City Hall over here. And so we're moving along with this program. In fact, that's a picture of the one that's in the parking lot. We're currently looking at a number of different sites throughout the city, including Montrose and Kenneth Village, Adams Square. There's a lot of different things you have to consider. You can't just go put out a charging station anywhere you want. You got to look at the power source, the distance to where you want it. The Americans with Disability Act compliance, there's a lot of things you have to comply there. The slope next to where it is. It's, there's all kinds of different things. If you're putting it in a parking garage, how big is the opening? If it's not high enough, then you can't put it in there, or you have to put one located outside. There's just things like that.
This was a little bit sobering for us when we realized that the first point there, the power source distance is easy for us. That's putting it in and connecting it. What we didn't realize is the electric code, building code, and ADA compliance that we had to go through, and those are taking quite a bit of time. And it also limits our ability to put them, as Craig said, the parking structures especially, because of slopes, because there in some cases is discussion whether a ADA accessible van can access, even though there is no electric van on the market yet. Yeah. They talk about building it. It can take as many as 3 parking spaces. So for our parking structures, it's not as big a deal because we're willing to sacrifice that. But you can imagine if you're going out to other places saying, we have a really prime spot, would you like to give up 3 spaces? Even if you're doing something in a shopping district like Montrose or Brand, it's like 3 spaces. Wait a minute now. Suddenly it becomes a little bit more difficult. So we had hoped that I think our budget actually allowed us to put somewhere in a 10 a year. And we're, as you can see, we haven't quite accomplished that, but not for lack of trying.
Yeah, the Montrose area, we looked at every parking lot up there, and we're not allowed to put one in because of the slopes.
The slopes are not conducive to ADA.
Has there been any thought into putting them in curbside near street lighting infrastructure?
Yes, in fact, Craig's going to get to that right now.
So, curbside and pole-mounted applications, that's what we're looking at right now. I believe that's a curbside one there. Yeah, a little more flexibility with those. Pole mounted, I believe we have a couple of those we're putting in right now. Where you have a power pole, you got the power right there, you mount it right to the pole, and you're pretty much ready to go. Is this, I gotta ask Herbert, because he said one of these pictures was ours. Was one of these ours? Oh, this one is ours, it's in Montrose, and we haven't charged it up yet, but it is mounted and ready to go. So LA put in 82 of these EV chargers on street light poles. We're just going to look at power poles, pretty much. It's just
Connection's much easier.
easier for us. And so that's the EV. Do you have any questions?
I think the takeaway there is we're forging ahead as fast as we can. It's just a matter of getting bogged down a little bit in our own red tape. But as I mentioned to Craig, because we've talked to other utilities as well, both municipal and IOUs, and they're facing some of the similar situations. Maybe not as much in LA, but it's funny that you get two different agencies. So you get those that are regulating the building and trade codes, and those wanting to advance things like renewable energy, and we're not quite in sync. So it may be something that we want to talk to our legislators about in Sacramento. Is there a way we could maybe help mesh this? Not looking for an exemption, so to speak, but maybe some relaxation considering what it is that you're trying to do for the electric vehicles. But we will continue to forge ahead.
Keep us posted.
Absolutely.
Sure.
In fact, we may talk to you sooner rather than later about that particular issue.
Yeah, the last area is energy efficiency targets and savings. I believe it's 3 years, we go in collaboration with SCAPA, NCPA, and California Municipal Utility Association, and we hire a consultant to help us do an, quote, inventory of energy efficiency potential in the city. There is a state law that requires us to do that. So actually, I got a little ahead of myself. I want to tell you of the good works we've done. So since 2000, we've invested $46 million in energy efficiency. And over the life of the installed measures, we've saved 1.7 million megawatt hours. That's a lot of energy saved for a small city. At our average rate, that's about $320 million in customer bill reductions over the life of the measures. So we're pretty proud of what we've done in terms of energy efficiency. Now I'll get back to I jumped ahead. It's every 4 years now that we do the energy efficiency target. So we just finished that in the past 6 months. And we, like I said, worked with California Municipal Utility Association, Northern California Power Agency, Navigant Consulting, and SCAPA. And over the next 10 years, we've committed to save 1.16% of our forecasted retail sales. That's an 8% increase over our previous target. Our target is the 4th highest of all the PLUs in California, and that includes LA and SMUD, so we're pretty proud of that. And since 2006, 2007, when we started calculating energy savings, we've consistently been in the top 10 in the state in terms of gross and net energy efficiency savings. So that's that presentation. If you have any questions.
How do you treat energy efficiency and demand response in your energy planning and IRP planning processes?
That's included. They include.
So you forecasted out the achievement of those targets, and then basically just reduce your demand. They
give you a 10-year forecast of annual savings, and they include that in the IRP when they're doing their forecasting.
Commissioners, any other questions? you very much. Next presentation.
Okay, 4C is customer service update.
Good afternoon, members of the Commission. I'm Tammy Valier, Customer Services Administrator. I'm here today to provide you with a customer service update. Thank you, Tanya. If you could just forward them for me, that'd be great. First, let me start by letting you know that we completed an assessment of the customer service operation this past summer, with a piece of that analysis being a comparison of our current performance against industry standard performance metrics. These are some of the most common contact center metrics that are available, and these are ones that I've presented to you in the past. You can see in all of them, with the exception of abandoned calls, we are average or sometimes slightly below average. As I go through the slides, I'll talk about that, why that is, and how we plan to improve. So first of all, the average handle time, which is the time spent on the phone and then any after-work documentation that's needed before they can move on with the customer. We're at 4 minutes and 59 seconds for those two pieces, which is the average, with the top quartile being 4 minutes and 4.5 minutes. The average answer speed, we're at 1 minute and 38 seconds on an average to answer our phone calls, with the average being 1 minute 13 seconds and the top quartile 46 seconds. The average talk time, 3 minutes and 59 seconds for GWP. The average 3 minutes and 52 seconds, so we're not too far behind that, with the top quartile 3 minutes and 41 seconds. And then on the average inbound calls that are abandoned, these are the calls that are lost. Caller hangs up before customer service rep answers the phone. We're losing 6.3% of our calls. The average is 7.5% of the calls, and the top quartile being 4.4%, which is where we were at last year. So the primary impact of our performance is that we've seen a 7% increase in calls this year. We decreased our calls last year, but our current volume is similar to what we saw in 2015-16. This year, as you know, we had an extremely hot summer. Customers were using their air conditioning. Obviously, that drives up the bill. In fact, we had 12,500 customer calls that were specific to the bill inquiring the consumption. That's compared to 6,500 the prior year. So those types of calls have doubled this year, at least in the first quarter. As the call volume increases, it's very typical for your call abandonment rate to increase as well. However, again, if you look at how we were performing in 15-16, where the volume of telephone calls was the same, we've actually made improvements from 8.5% to 6.3%. And this is due to our ongoing efforts to cross-train the billing staff with the call center staff so that we can share those resources. We've also formalized our overflow call procedure, so we know exactly how many calls are in queue, when the next person needs to get on the phones, et cetera. Some of the things that we're doing, sorry, just one, if you could go back one. Some of the things that we're doing to try and improve the abandoned calls that can help address that fluctuation in the number of calls that we're getting from year to year is looking at new technology features such as upfront wait time messages to the customer. We're also looking at virtual hold, which is where a customer can opt to hang up and have GWP call them back without losing their place in queue. We're also looking at upfront customer validation, which takes a lot of time for the customer service reps as they're talking to the customer, validating social security numbers and other information. And then an online appointment scheduler. And then not related to abandoned calls exactly, but something that we'd look for in a feature for the new telephone system would be to have customer satisfaction surveys that are available right after the call so we can measure our customer satisfaction on a more frequent and immediate basis.
And let me just add, in fairness to Tammy and her staff, we did a complete analysis and review of the customer service operation that we completed last year. one of the key things they mentioned was, you have a phone system that is like from the Flintstone age. For somebody that has that volume of calls doing the business that you're doing, that phone system was antiquated 10 years ago. So that is one of the things that we're looking at, is to develop a system that will assist us in being able to better handle the customer calls. But I think the folks are doing a great job for what we have to work with, especially when you're dealing with, we're dealing with a customer that's calling likely about their bill. So they're probably not happy and they're a little frustrated. So, anything we can do to make that process a little bit easier for them, get them in a queue system or the ability to call back and not lose their place, all of these things I think are beneficial. So we're looking at that as from a budgetary standpoint. I don't believe this is going to be a very inexpensive endeavor, but one that I think we need to pursue.
And just to add on to that, we are on the city's phone system. We do have our own IVR system, but they work together. And so we're already in talks with our information services department so that we could plan and prepare for this next budget that's coming up.
Excuse me, I have a question. Do you have translators for people not talking fluently in English? Or how
We do. We have several Armenian speakers and Spanish speakers as well. And the way our phone system works is they can opt to choose an Armenian-speaking queue or Spanish-speaking queue.
So how the time is compared? Translation calls and non-translation calls?
This is blended. I could get that for you. We have that information. That's actually a very good question. I don't have that, but this is a blended metric for us right now. But I'd be more than happy to bring that back the next time. Okay, back to the average telephone handle time. So again, this is the talk time plus the after call work time. And that has continued to improve, even though some of the high consumption calls that we've been receiving can also be the most challenging customer calls that we have. We're doing better with this because staff has been working with the AMI data now for some time. They're more efficient in accessing the data. They have to go to another system right now, sign on to another system to get that information, which will eventually be upgraded into one. They're better at explaining the consumption patterns, correlating that usage to weather, if they have a weather overlay for the days that they were peaking with their energy, and helping the customers identify what might be the cause of the high consumption, whether it's timer setting or thermostat setting. So they're getting more efficient in how to work with these customers using the data. We've seen an improvement in the after-call piece of this metric as staff is becoming more efficient utilizing customer emails. So it's standard practice now to get customer emails. And then if they want to see their hourly data, if they don't want to use the mobile app or access some of the portals where they could do it by themselves, then the customer service rep can go ahead and just email it to the customer rather than having to fax it or traditional prepare an envelope for mailing. We'll soon actually be moving to having the reps be able to fax straight from their desktop other than having to get up from their desk and then go to the one fax machine that we have in the office. So that's some of the reasons why we've seen those improvements. The other thing that has actually impacted some of our call center metrics is that we've had to move some of our resources to other areas that are increasing in volume, such as the email and web contacts. We've seen an increase in this every year, and this quarter we saw a 28% jump in the first quarter, where the industry standard for call handle time is just 5 minutes. The industry standard for responding to email and web contacts is 7.5 minutes. So we're seeing more of these types of contacts, and they take longer to address. This is another area where technology can help us. We'll be upgrading our customer portal where customers can make payment arrangements online, move-ins, set up their auto pay, and have this really be automated. Right now, you can do a move-in online through our portal, and you can do a move-out through the portal, but all of these transactions actually just end up in an inbox for staff to then manually work. So it's not a real automated process. Even though it may look that way to a customer, on the back office side, it's not. And then again, another area we've seen an increase this quarter is the volume at the front counter. And this too is related to customers coming in and inquiring about their high summer bills. But it's also the development coming online and prompting new customers to come into our counter. The increase at the front counter did not have an impact to cashiering, where we only saw a 0.5% increase this quarter. The reduction from 2015-16 that you see was due to a very strong marketing campaign that we did promote for all of the different payment options that we do have available, and that has proven to be successful. Just so you know, right now 57% of all of our payments are received at some form of electronic payment, whether it's auto pay or using their home banking. So that is a very high percentage, and every year we've seen a steady increase. And then some good news. Some additional common benchmarks for the customer service operation were bill accuracy and write-off to revenue. For bill accuracy, we are in the top quarter with 99.95% of our bills free of errors. And then the write-off to revenue, we are at the very top of the top quartile with just over 0.1% uncollectible. So we're doing excellent in that area. And then finally, these last three are key performance indicators that are important to our operation. If these aren't completed in a timely manner, it really does impact the customer. It also impacts other areas of our section, such as the call center. So for example, daily billing, we need to, from the time the meter is supposed to be read, we need to capture that read. We need to make sure the bills are generated, printed, and mailed to the customer within 2 days. Late bills generate phone calls to the call center. So it's really important that we meet that target, and we're doing that. Bill exceptions, we talked a little bit about that earlier. We need to bill and post those within 10 days of meter reading, and those are all of the bills that fall out of the normal bill process because they are higher or lower than normal. Some of those are not necessarily higher or lower. They could be the solar accounts. Those automatically fall out into our exceptions. First bills fall out into the exceptions. So we want to have all of these worked within 10 days, whether it's a customer service rep that needs to do an investigation looking at the account a little bit more carefully to see maybe it's vacant. That's why it's lower. Sometimes we have to have a field technician go out just to verify the meter. Sometimes even our utility operations center has to go out. So we have a goal of working those within 10 days, 98% of the time, and we're at 99%. And then finally, meter exchanges, installs, or removals. Those we need to work within 5 days of the field work, and we're meeting that 99% of the time. And that's my presentation.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, any questions?
Yes, actually, I have a question. Have you categorized the type of questions percentage-wise? Is it about rates? Is it about other complaints or what?
Yes, we we tally all of our calls over the telephone and at the front counter. In the past, I think I've provided you with a pie chart, and I didn't do that for this one. I can tell you definitely for this quarter, it was bill inquiry and consumption usage. We saw a little bit of a decrease in just typical accounts being updated, and surprisingly, even though customers were calling about high bills, we saw a slight reduction in payment arrangements this quarter. And then, of course, we saw what we were seeing over the last 2 years was questions about water conservation, and those have definitely dropped off.
Okay, any other questions, commissioners? Otherwise, Madam Clerk, should we move to the next item?
5 is oral communications.
I have one card from Daniel Brotman.
Good evening, President Lal and commissioners and staff. My name is Dan Brotman, and I am a co-founder of the Glendale Environmental Coalition. At the last commission meeting, you agreed to set aside some time to talk about the Grayson expansion, but I don't believe you decided on a firm date for that. I'm here to ask that you agendize that discussion at the earliest possible time, ideally at your next meeting, and also that you frame it specifically as a discussion intended to put out a unified recommendation to the City Council. I'd also like to give you my thoughts on what that recommendation should look like. And in this, I'm speaking not just on my behalf, but really for the whole now nearly 250 members of the coalition. I believe the recommendation should be to halt the Grayson EIR process and immediately commission a study of clean energy alternatives. The goal of the study should be to determine the extent to which combination of solar, storage, energy efficiency, and demand response can meet Glendale's current and future needs. This would essentially be a feasibility study with a matrix of options to consider. One key point is that this study must be done by a firm that has strong clean energy credentials and one that does not face conflicts of interest. It clearly can't be Stantec because they stand to gain a huge amount of business as the designated owner's engineer on any future Grayson project. And it can't be Pace Global because they, as you know, are a unit of the company Siemens that would be supplying the gas turbines. NREL would be a good choice, as would E3, and there may be others. In the meantime, the Commission should be asking tough questions about the upkeep of the existing units. We recently heard that GWP decided to permanently close down Unit 3. Why was this done? Where did Glendale Water and Power Management get the engineering advice that the life of Unit 3 couldn't be extended with some reasonable maintenance? I'm concerned because I understand that GWP doesn't have the engineering depth that it once did, especially after losing Ramon Abweg, who I believe was the chief engineer, and I understand has not been replaced. I don't like to say this, but it worries me that the decision to shut down Unit 3 might have been designed to put pressure on the Council to quickly approve the Grayson project. I would suggest that an engineering consultant from GE or somewhere else be brought in to look at what it would cost to stabilize existing units so that they can be run reliably for another several years, giving us the time we need to make a reasoned decision about Grayson's future. Again, it can't be Stantec or Pace, and I would say it also shouldn't be GWP. Their recent promotional efforts show that they are just too committed to the project to be objective about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brotman.
Just for Commission's edification, you'll see that in a minute. The February meeting has Grayson, both discussion on the DEIR and also on the repower project as a whole. In fact, as we segue into that part of it, I'm recommending that we just leave the meeting with those two items. Right now, we've got a number of other items on that list. I'm going to move the first two, the WECNEC and the legislative update. Actually, the legislative update's pretty worthless at that point because we haven't really kicked things off in Sacramento yet.
Well, except to the extent that we may want to, recommend changes in the law, and the bill introduction deadline is February 18th. So that would be only. The bill introduction deadline in Sacramento is February 18th. So that would be a good opportunity to make recommendations for council to have the city potentially support or sponsor any kind of bills that the utility might find useful. But I leave it to everyone else's judgment about whether to keep that on there.
We could do that. I mean, I'll leave it up to you all. But I wanted to dedicate that meeting to the Grayson discussion, so it gives you enough time. Traditionally, we haven't been the authors of bills. We've usually worked through the agencies where our combined efforts through either SCAPA and or CMUA, where those organizations that we belong to kind of run with things, and then we have our council back those up, but we can certainly put it on there if you'd like. I just wanted to dedicate the time to Grayson.
Madam Clerk, we had skipped item 3, GWP Commission and staff comments. Would now be the appropriate time to return to that agenda item?
3 is GWP Commission staff comments.
Okay. So, Mr. Zern, did you have any comments you wanted to
No,
add
ma'am, I don't
in
have
addition
any.
to that?
I don't have any other comments.
All right. So I had a question, which was just that the comment period has now closed as of
Yes.
November 20th for the Grayson Repower project. Do you have a tally of how many comments were received?
We have an estimate, which is 1,200. We're still tallying. Many of those are form letters, but that's probably the best estimate that we can give at this time.
Okay.
And what we're trying to do is get the actual count of the responses and then categorize them into what that question was,
unique
because there's
or-
tremendous duplication.
Right. So unique or non-unique?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And what is the time frame for response, and are we still on the same trajectory time-wise that we were at our previous meeting for when we expect the final to come out, including the response to comments?
Yes, ma'am. We still are on that and hope to have something after the first of the year, very close after the first of the year. Christine, do you have anything to add?
We're looking at having responses to comments prepared by mid to late January, so that we would be able to bring this matter back. I believe in February is the plan.
And so would that then be the final? Would that be both the response to comments and a final EIR?
Correct.
Okay.
So you'll see that's why we segregated it on the look-ahead agenda. So we have a DEIR, or just the environmental portion, and then a general discussion on the repower.
And when would you expect that to be presented to City Council?
Next month, March,
The following month?
that's our
Okay.
goal.
Okay, any comments from other commissioners? We've returned to item number 3, which is staff comments and commission comments. Okay. Next agenda item?
6 is agenda forecast.
So it appears that we do have a meeting cancellation next month because of the New Year
Holiday.
holiday.
Then in the February meeting, as I just stated, I was going to move the legislative, but if you want to leave it for a brief discussion on whether there's any recommendations to try to author anything, I was going to dedicate it to Grayson, all things Grayson. With, again, separate items on the agenda for the environmental CEQA part of it and the general project itself.
This is certainly not the sword that I'm going to fall on, so if the commissioners would like to hear the legislative update, that's fine, but otherwise I can take it or leave it. I think it's entirely appropriate to spend that meeting going over Grayson and devoting the time to that.
Then I think, Commissioner Hale, if we move it down to March, we'll be able to bring you a pretty comprehensive report of where we went at things with the other agencies, with our organizations that we belong to. And the NERC and WEC update is usually pretty basic, so I don't think that's going to hurt to wait. And as you said, emphasizes Grayson in that particular month.
Okay, so for our March meeting, which currently looks a little thin, the legislative update will then move to March, and the NERC work, or the NERC WEC compliance program update would also bump down?
That is correct.
Okay.
Then in April, we've got the 2 quarterly updates, customer service and strategic plan, but I'm suggesting that we add in there a discussion on the proposed rate schedule for both, hopefully both water and electric.
And thank you for introducing that topic. So I'm sorry, when would you have introduced COSA?
The April meeting.
And then when would the COSA go to the city council?
The proposed rate structure would probably go to them the next month in May.
May, okay. Thank you.
Is there separate topic of discussion about the finances of GWP?
That's during the budget season, so that's usually about probably June. Because we have our meeting early in the month, we'll bring you a budget presentation in June. We can add that to the list.
Is that going to be before or after City Council's budget?
Well, City Council has budget study sessions throughout the year. So there may be some facets of the GWP budget that gets sent to them, but they usually make their decision on the final budget in mid to late June. So just to confirm, we're good with the rate study and rate schedules in April, and we'll add the budget for June.
Thank you.
Anything else? We're in good shape?
Okay. 7, adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved? Second.
We are adjourned.
There'll be scary ghost stories and tales of the glories of Christmases.